Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Community Services Associates, Inc.'s Board of Directors meeting of Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. The board convened at 9:30 and met in executive session to discuss legal issues. And we are now back in session, in public session. I welcome those who are watching the video live and all those who may be watching it in the future. Ms. Adams, can you confirm that we still have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Great, thank you very much. The first order of business is to ratify the approval of the Board of Directors meeting minutes of May 25th, 2021. These have all been distributed in advance, and I understand there were no comments. Are there any other questions regarding any of the minutes, the meeting minutes of May 25th, 2021? Hearing none, I'll move for ratification and approval. Mr. Caskey, seconded by Mr. Johnson. All in favor, raise your hands. They are approved. In addition, we have the annual meeting of the membership meeting minutes from May 3rd, 2021. These have been distributed as well. Under our bylaws, these minutes are approved by the Board of Directors. Is there a motion to, is there any question about any of the minutes that were distributed? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Mr. Thompson, seconded by Ms. Adams. All in favor, raise your hands. Those minutes are approved. Thank you all. Before I get into my remarks, I want to remind those who are watching the video live that we will continue to accept questions for the board and the staff throughout this meeting. Immediately upon adjournment, we will take those questions up and try to answer them to the best of our ability. If you have questions and you haven't already submitted them, you can submit them to questions@csacpines.com. Again, we welcome all questions that you may have for the board and or the staff, consistent with the reports that they will be giving today. With that, I'll turn to my chair's remarks. I'm going to read them a little bit since I wanted to make sure that they were very clear today. As we all know, CSA received an extremely positive response to the critical infrastructure referendum in January, with over 75.6% of the ballots returned and almost 88% of those voting approving the Fifth Amendment to the 1974 Declaration of Covenants and Restrictions that will provide the financial path to finally fixing our aging roads, bridges, leisure trails, and stormwater systems. Nevertheless, as some of you, but not all of the property owners may know, one of our property owners, Ms. Jill Jinks, has taken CSA, ASPO, and the Sea Pines Resort to federal court, seeking to overturn the referendum results based on her belief that these parties did not comply with our covenants in calling for the referendum. I want to assure you of CSA's absolute confidence in the appropriateness of the steps we took in calling and running the referendum, and our full confidence that our actions will be affirmed by the court. And given the extraordinary importance of beginning the collection of the new assessments in January 2022, we've already taken several steps in the litigation to try to bring it to an early resolution, well before the January 2022 payment date. Unfortunately, Ms. Jinks has opposed those actions at every turn. For example, CSA initially sought an expedited resolution of the Jinks lawsuit in court based upon the overwhelming support for the referendum, contending that even if there were flaws in the calling of the referendum, which I want to stress we deny, the overwhelming support of the participating property owners demonstrated a ratification of CSA's approach, which would make a redo absolutely unnecessary and a waste of time and resources. But even before responding to our motion, Ms. Jinks asked the court for the opportunity to engage in further fact-finding efforts, delaying our ability to get that quick resolution. And when CSA and the other defendants asked the court to limit the time available for that additional fact-finding to 3 months, which we felt was more than adequate, so that the matter might be resolved this year, Ms. Jinks again opposed expedition and instead asked for 7 months of fact-finding, assuring that the matter would not be resolved until well into the spring of 2022. Although these rulings have no bearing on the actual outcome of the litigation, to date, the court has sided with Ms. Jinks' procedural approaches. While we continue to have confidence that we will get an outcome favorable to CSA and the others, with the likelihood that Ms. Jink's efforts will continue to disrupt and delay the critical infrastructure referendum well past January 2022, CSA's board is now focusing on alternative means of assuring that the funds that would be available through the critical infrastructure assessment can be billed and collected in 2022. We must do so in order to provide the certainty necessary for us to budget and contract out for the important work that should be started well before the court may decide the issue, if we are to meet our reasonable and critical goals for fixing our roads and stormwater systems. In that regard, I want to assure you that we are regularly consulting with outside counsel to assure that no legal alternative approach is off the table. And I want to stress, no legal alternative approach is off the table. Whether we decide to pursue another referendum, impose significant new fees, or even return to the possibility of a special tax district, we will find a way to satisfy the clear mandate from the overwhelming majority of participating property owners who endorsed the referendum. I want to stress also that these are not paths we want to explore, but given the uncertainty created by Ms. Jink's litigation, we owe it to those property owners who clearly desire a path to fixing our critical infrastructure by being sure that the necessary funds are available in a timely fashion. We don't have answers yet, but I did feel it necessary and important to let all of our property owners know that we will not step away from our obligation to bring our critical infrastructure back to its proper standard in a timely fashion, and we will continue to do what is necessary and proper to achieve that goal. Let me turn now to something I mentioned in my June letter. As my June letter made clear, that came out yesterday, funding for critical infrastructure is not our only funding need. With the population of Sea Pines expanded well beyond anything we've seen in the past, many of the problems property owners have identified to us over the last several months are really the same problems Sea Pines has always had. They're simply magnified manyfold by a much larger number of residents and guests now populating our community. Solving these concerns to the best of our ability will require significantly more manpower than our current budgets allow, both in terms of personnel needed and the salaries and benefits necessary to attract qualified and quality personnel to our community. As we explore alternatives for funding our critical needs infrastructure projects, I want the community to know that we are also exploring alternatives for funding our operating budget. And given the efforts of a very small number of property owners to litigate their view of how we should operate, we must assume that any action we take may be challenged and delayed. So we're being extremely cautious in considering any approach for which there is any reasonable doubt as to the board's authority to act. We're working with outside counsel so that what we do, we are sure will be legal. But with that caveat, I can pledge to you that this board will act to assure that the resources are available to maintain the high standard of living that we should expect even in the new normal that is Sea Pines 2021 and beyond. I thought it was important for the community to understand that this board will not stop in making sure during our terms that we satisfy the financial needs for the future of Sea Pines. With that, I'll turn to our president, Sam, for your remarks.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take just a few minutes to give the community an update on some things that we've been working on, primarily with the town of Hilton Heads. First of all, I want to thank the town for the approach they've taken in the recent months to issues that relate directly to Sea Pines. If you had an opportunity to ride down Greenwood Drive, you've seen the $2.2 million the town has put into the Logan Canal pump station. Very fortunate for us, a great project. Very pleased with the town's efforts there. That project will do much good for many years. The question that's been on the minds of many folks is the gallery of shops. I'm very pleased to report that we've made significant progress with the town on the gallery of shops. I expect that we will have much more to announce on the gallery of shops coming in the month of July. The town understands the importance of dealing with the gallery of shops, Sea Pines, and the leadership of the town has been very encouraging to us. So I think in July, we'll have a formal announcement on the gallery of shops and more on actually on the Greenwood corridor. I mentioned last time the importance of that corridor at our last board meeting. The town has also been engaging with us on the potential solutions for the traffic coming in and out on the circle. We're working with the town and we'll be working with the county to come up with solutions that are appropriate for that can make the most value coming out of Sea Pines at the circle. More to come on that. The other thing the town is working with us on is additional signage on the 3 other corridors coming into Sea Pines. We're looking to add additional signage, rework the signage on Palmetto Bay Boulevard, on William Hilton, and on Pope Avenue, so that we can better engage our visitors and our guests coming in, so they understand which lane to be in, that there is a pass purchase required coming into Sea Pines, so that those folks that are not necessarily wanting to come into Sea Pines or don't feel like they want to purchase a pass won't make the turn into Sea Pines. Right now, the signage outside the Greenwood corridor is a bit confusing. It doesn't do an adequate job of informing visitors and guests with that. And so the town is committed to us to work with us through that. And we will have more to come on that in the very near future. Finally, the town has been working with us as we work through some additional stormwater costs and projects. I'm happy to report over the course of the last couple of months, we've been able to recover an additional $115,000 from the town on previous stormwater projects that have been billed from years past that the town wasn't willing to engage with us previously on, that we'd written off, but we have recovered additional dollars from the town, and we appreciate their willingness to work with us on those dollars. Finally, we've been working with the town on updating our hurricane information. A small test yesterday with the storm that came through. It is hurricane season. There are other storms brewing out there. We've seen a lot going on in the tropics. CSA Sea Pines is going to be ready, and hopefully you will see in the coming weeks, just like we saw yesterday, some of the improvements we've been making with our infrastructure on Greenwood Drive, with our ditch improvements and maintenance. It is paying dividends for us. We are seeing less flooding, fewer issues when we have large downpours, and we're continuing to move forward using our resources and the town's resources to improve and I should say retake some of the ditches and stormwater issues that we're having here in Sea Pines. So more to come, more to talk about on that as we work through some of the director reports. And then lastly, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you bringing up staffing in your remarks. Staffing continues to be a challenge. We are absolutely in a very tight labor market competition, and we are doing everything we can to properly staff this community. We were understaffed previously to do the things we need to do, and as the number of visitors and guests has increased, the pressures on staffing has also increased, and so we continue to work to hire and fully staff this organization. But we're in tough competition with a lot of folks. But staff will have some recommendations for next year's budget on how to do that. But we've also implemented some additional things that Victoria Shanahan will talk about in the near future. So those are my remarks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions for Sam before I move on to the staff reports? Seeing none, we will move on to staff reports. Thank you, Sam, for that very helpful report. First up is Ms. Sutcliffe-Jones. Amanda, on communications.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, board members, as well as Sam and staff that are in the conference room, and to those who are watching on the video. A couple of quick items to update and pass along from the communications department. The first is the reminder of our CSA board of director elections. Applications are due by August 1st. The petition deadline is October 1st. Ballots will be sent out to members on November 1st, and the deadline to return those will be December 1st. So we're looking forward to that process. If you are interested, please submit your application to CSA. More information can be found on our website at seapinesliving.com/elections. The next update is from the Communications Committee. As directed, staff are now circulating committee meeting minutes for approval by email. This is causing us to be able to get them online faster for review and for posting of those records. Our meeting minutes can be found on our website at cpinesliving.com/property owners. In addition, under the Communications Committee, a recommendation for board resolutions was made. So those board resolutions are being posted along with the agenda on our website. You can look at the agenda as well as the resolutions. They come in our email, but we also have them on our website at cpinesliving.com/events under the specific event for that board meeting. From the Strategic Planning Committee, the committee is considering a possible future survey to provide additional direction to the board. And they are also working with staff to review the 2018 strategic plan to determine what has been accomplished since the plan was created and what we still need to tackle. So we're looking forward to that. From the Governance Committee, staff is pleased that the board today will consider the recommendation for moving our voting operations for our CSA Board of Director elections to an online voting platform. You'll hear from our Governance Committee Chairman, Jim Caskey, a little later in the meeting, who will cover the topic. Just a quick reminder for the LUM rules and regulations. Those regulations become effective Thursday, July 1st. And we're excited for that process to take effect. You can look at those online on our website at cpinesliving.com/LUM rules. And finally, if staff can be of any assistance or if you need to update your contact information, you can feel free to reach out to us by phone, 843-671-1343, or our general email inbox at info@csacpines.com. That's all I have, Larry. Happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for Amanda from the board? Sam?
I'd just like to thank Amanda for all her hard work on the electronic election piece. We're very excited about that from a staff perspective. There's going to be immense value and from a time and a financial savings to move to electronic balloting, and hopefully in the future we can move other election and balloting issues to be fully electronic. Also like to thank Amanda and the Communications Committee for her work on focusing the communications to our residents a bit more. We are trying to really focus on the issues and the details of CSA operations, and Amanda's done an excellent job with that, and there is certainly more to come on that in the near future, so we're looking to continue that process.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. And before I move on, I do want to stress, Amanda noted the Board of Elections nominations process is underway. I can't urge enough those who feel that there is an issue with the board or feel that have problems with what the board does. The easiest way to fix it is to get on the board. Some people often refer to it as a thankless task. To the contrary, we are regularly thanked for the service we provide by people, mostly by people that we don't know. Obviously, our friends are always appreciative. So it isn't a thankless task. It's a job. It takes time, but it gives you the opportunity to be involved in a positive way, unlike all of the social media opportunities that you have to complain or to even comment positively, but without having the ability to actually implement. So if you are seriously interested in what the board's activities are and believe that you can make a difference by having your views known, I urge you to file for nomination and see if you are in fact qualified. I'm particularly interested in, and I'll be honest, we need to be more diversified in terms of non-resident property owners, in terms of non-white male board members. So please feel free if you are interested to apply. With that, I will move on to Finance and Administration. Ms. Shanahan, move the camera over to you so you can be seen. And, well, Cecil B. DeMille, not today.
There you go.
There you go.
There I am. Okay. Finance and Administration. We are working on preparing a document retention policy, which will be so we will be coming back to the board with approval and review of that in the coming months. We are implementing a new payroll software. We currently use ADP, and we are moving to something called Ceridian. And the reason for the move is because Ceridian does talk to our new database NetSuite. I just wanted to thank Tracy McNeil, who I know who has been in meetings, sometimes multiple meetings per day, trying to get this implemented. And Bridie Forbes, our human resources, has been working with the staff to get them updated as to how to clock in and out. And of course, Stephen, who always keeps us things running in the background. So thank you. We're gonna get this, we're gonna make it work. We're going live next week, so we'll make sure everybody gets paid. And finally, as you know, we're still working on security software implementation. We're making great progress with that. We now CSA 360 now talks to NetSuite. They talked back and forth to one another, so that was a big hurdle we got over. And we are always working on, as Sam mentioned, we are always working on recruiting and hiring. We currently have 5 vacancies in security and 3 vacancies in maintenance. And finally, I just thought the board might be interested in this, that since January 1 of 2021, there have been 354 properties turned over in Sea Pines. It's just a significant number, and I wanted the board to share that with the board.
Any questions for Victoria? Any questions, Sam?
I just want to thank Victoria and Russell for their work with the town to recover the additional stormwater dollars. It was a very detailed process, but well worth $115,000. I think it was $115,000, Victoria, is that right number?
About 111.
111, I'm sorry.
Close.
Well, $111,000, which is monies we were not anticipating. So thank her and Russell for their hard work with the town.
Thank you, Sam. And I do want to stress that you'll hear it a number of times today from me. We are 6 down in security, which itself is a problem. And that is 6 down from the budgeted number, not the number that we all have come to believe we need as Sea Pines 2021 is well populated beyond what we anticipated when the budgets were put together. So when people are appropriately noting that there may not be a guard at a certain location, or that some things aren't getting done as quickly as we'd like, recognize we are 6 people down, and we have to prioritize where those 6 people are working, and they're not all armed officers. They are staff folks, gate attendants, and others. So please understand that we are doing the best we can to fill the slots that we have budgeted, which itself doesn't constitute the needs when you add guards at Tower Place, when you add guards at the Ocean Gate bike path, and other places. And that's something that we are working desperately to do, and also to find the funds necessary, not only to fill those slots, but to fill what we really need. So you'll hear that message from me a number of times. Next, if there are any other questions for Victoria? Scott?
There, excuse me, Larry. I know we talked about this a little, but could y'all elaborate just real quickly about, I mean, are we raising the salaries, or, I mean, what are we doing to try to differentiate ourselves from some of the other spots and perhaps fill these things? Is it a salary issue, or what's the real issue?
Scott, it really is. There are salary pressures, and we are raising salaries both internally and for new hires as needed. But the other issue is actually just probably the bigger issue is availability of workforce. You know, when we advertise for a job and we get 1 to 2 applicants or no applicants, that's a real challenge for us. And so I am hopeful that some of the changes that are occurring in Washington are going to encourage some folks that maybe are sitting on the sidelines right now to get back into the labor market. That will be helpful and beneficial to us. But really, it's you know, we've lost a couple of employees because of salary issues, and honestly, the third piece of it is the traffic and the drive time to get to Sea Pines. I mean, for someone coming to Sea Pines to go to work that doesn't live on the island, it is a commute. And it can be a real commute depending how far out you live. We have employees that live all the way in Savannah, and believe it or not, Savannah is one of our larger pools for employment. But that takes a toll on folks, and so they have to really be committed to be here, and we have to encourage them to be here. So those are the 3 issues we're facing: salary pressures, just a tight labor market itself, and the challenges associated with the commute, particularly in the summertime when the whole island is fully staffed out.
And obviously this is it's a island-wide, it's a Sea Pines problem, it's an island-wide problem, it's a county problem. And truthfully, if you read any national paper from a big city, it's everywhere. So we're doing the best we can. We also want to remind ourselves that Sea Pines is not just any place. So we have to get a quality. We have to get a certain quality of personnel that we're going to all want out there. And it is tough, but we're doing the best we can. Again, I ask the board and our community to be patient if there are times when a guard isn't exactly where they want, an attendant isn't where they want them to be, or where it takes a little bit more time to get things taken care of. With that, any other questions for Victoria? Seeing none, we'll move on to maintenance, enhancement, and major projects. Mr. Fredericks.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Sam. Just a quick update this morning. As Sam mentioned, we're in our tropical season now, where these tropical storms and hurricanes will be coming up the coast. I'm pleased to report that we're 80% complete on our ditch work throughout the community. That's an important network of several miles of ditch conveying stormwater through and out of the community into Calabogie Sound. That work will continue over the upcoming weeks and months ahead. The other project, as Sam mentioned, is the Lawton Canal Pump Station. I'm pleased to report that it is fully operational in advance of the upcoming tropical season. So again, those two projects are significant, and again, pleased to report the progress in those two. Glad to take any questions this morning. No questions? Well, thank you very much.
Any questions for Russell? Before I let you go, Russell, yesterday was clearly a major rainstorm. Living near a golf course, there was plenty of water on it. Did we see any improvement in where the worst case problems were?
We are seeing improvements throughout the entire community, Larry, where we've done a lot of this ditch work. We've removed thousands of cubic yards of sediment and organic matter that's accumulated in those ditches over the last 30 years or more. Again, seeing vast improvements throughout the community, and we're pressing forward to continue that ditch work as it's a critical piece of that infrastructure.
Sam?
I'd just like to add to that. I want to thank Russell and particularly Doug Cook and his team for leading the efforts on that ditch work. We knew we'd get a bang for our buck when we hired the contractor to come in on the ditch work, but we are seeing a much higher bang for our buck as it relates to the ditch work. So we may be coming back to the board in the future to seek some additional resources to continue the ditch work beyond the original scope of the project. That's how much value we're seeing out of that work, and it's paying dividends. So again, thanks to Russell and Doug for taking the lead on that, and you'll continue to see more of that going on around the community.
Good. I hope the community is noticing as well. Okay, we will turn then to operations and special projects. Mr. Henderson. David?
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to everyone. I just had one brief announcement. The Sea Pines Forest Preserve Foundation is pleased to announce that the Forest Preserve will be reinitiating their events later this year. The community yard sale will be on Saturday, October 2nd. It's important to note that historically the yard sale was held on the third Saturday in October, but for this year and for the years to come, that has been moved to the first Saturday in October. So community yard sale, Saturday, October 2nd. Bonfire will be held on Friday, November 12th. That is as regularly scheduled, Friday, November 12th. And for both of these events, there will be additional information forthcoming. That completes my report, Mr. Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions for David? David, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. McSwain, Safety, Security, and Transportation.
Good morning, everyone. We continue with our busy summer responding to calls for service. For the month of June, we have once again surpassed the 3,000 calls for service for this month. I will say this month we have responded to more serious calls than we have in the past. We've had multiple DUI arrests. We've had some serious car accidents where the vehicles were overturned. We've had multiple assaults and battery. One was the use of a deadly weapon. We've responded to domestic disturbances. Breaking in and motor vehicles continue. And I would highlight that to date, since January, to my knowledge, I'm not aware that we've had any vehicle that has been forcibly entered. All of these vehicles were left unlocked. We've had serious bicycle crashes where the cyclists have been transported to the hospital. And then we continue with our usual calls for service through the busy season, the improper parking, the noise complaints, the wildlife calls, et cetera. The calls for service so far total for this year is 18,270. And I want to make mention on one thing about this parking. We are receiving a number of calls from property owners concerning street side parking. I would like to state that street side parking during daylight hours is allowed in C-Pines, provided that the emergency vehicles have access to the right of way to get through the street, and that there is no posted parking signs in the area. With that, street side parking is not reserved for property owners only. So if you have a rental across the street and someone's parked roadside, an emergency vehicle can pass, that is permitted. And that policy was changed in 2010 by the board. For this month, we've also conducted 82 traffic stops and issued 78 state citations. In the security department, recruiting and maintaining qualified personnel still is our #1 challenge. This past week, we lost one of our security administrators, and we plan to lose another one here in the next 2 weeks. So we do ask the property owners who have business here, either with decals or ID cards, to please be patient during these transitional times, and that we will definitely get to their needs when we can. We do continue to average about 45,000 vehicles a week through the Greenwood Gate, and roughly about 21,000+ through our back gates. So the population of cars that are still steadily continuing to come through. Our rental bike companies that bring bikes from the outside into C-Pines for delivery for the month of June, that is 4,216 bikes have been brought in. We did install a bicycle counter at the back gate on May 5th. And as of June 1st, we've had 14,800 bikes come through the leisure path there at the back gate. We have purchased some additional counters. They are going to be installed at various locations throughout C-Pines so that we can really better understand and get a grasp on just what the bicycle activity here is in C-Pines. And I'm sure it's going to be quite a bit. We still are waiting for the replacement of the broken gate that's at the back gate. This gate was ordered in April. It's my understanding that it's due to back order for the gate pieces due to COVID. We keep getting notified by the contractor that the bike gate's on the way. We're hoping that is going to take place here in the very near future. We will have extra staff at Tower Beach on the 4th of July. The salute from the shore will take place at 1:30. And I asked the property owners that are going to attend this event, please park in a marked parking space and do not block emergency access at Tower Beach. We just ask that, not everybody in C-Pine is going to get to go on the 4th of July and park at Tower Beach to watch the salute from the shore. So it's first come, first serve. So please help us out with that. The trolley business has picked up over the last month. The beach riders for this month has been 2,450 people for a total of 5,600 from Lot 8 that going to the beach club this year, 5,600 total for the year. In March, no one rode the Green Line from South Beach to Harbor Town. This month, 4,800 people have ridden that route. The Blue Line from Harbor Town to the beach club is our busiest with 14,444 people riding it so far this season. And the total for all trolley riders, for all routes, all personnel is 32,248 for the season. We are waiting on a contractor to start our gate kiosk at the Greenwood Gate. I'm being told that's being delayed from windows that are on back order due to COVID. I'm assuming. Hopefully we can get this project here moving pretty soon. We did send out a letter to all the rental management companies as well as the bicycle rental companies talking about the restriction of use of electric bikes and sea pines. And we have also directly contacted a number of rental bike companies and asked them to please not drop off bikes and lean them against the mailbox during business here in Sea Pines. It's unsightly, and we have reached out to them. That concludes my update, unless anyone has any questions.
Are there any questions for Carolyn? Carolyn Adams?
Yes. Toby, can you just speak, you let out with the more aggressive crimes we've had in Sea Pines. Can you speak to how the interaction with the Beaufort County Sheriff's Office works in dealing with any of this and the issues we have in Sea Pines?
Yes. Private security in South Carolina is restricted from doing any type of investigations. When we have something that leads into where it's going to get into an investigative mode, we are required by law to contact Beaufort County Sheriff. I will say they are short-staffed as well. They do respond to these calls that we have, and they assume those investigations and lead them through to that process. I hope that answered. Did I answer your question, Carolyn?
Yes. Any other questions for Toby? I have a couple I wanted to raise before Sam. First of all, Toby mentioned the street parking. We do have a board created parking task force that is looking at the parking issues throughout the community. I expect hopefully sometime before the end of the fall, we will have come up with some ideas and recommendations. Obviously, again, when Sea Pines is fully populated, a lot of homes were not designed to have the multiple cars that are necessary when families in town or guests are in town. But we also want to recognize the importance of trying to maintain safety for our vehicles and also convenience for our property owners. So we're working on that issue. The second issue that Toby mentioned was the trolleys and the green line that is coming from South Beach. A trolley operator is certainly authorized if a property owner who otherwise is entitled to have access to South Tower Beach asks to stop and get off at Tower Beach. The trolley operator is going to do so. That's a convenience for that property owner. It also limits the number of cars that have to park at Tower Beach. So I know that some folks have been asking us about why it is that the trolley is stopping. It's not a regular stop, but if a trolley operator is asked by a property owner, and a property owner only, they will allow that property owner in Tower Beach. In that regard, there is in fact a public access onto Tower Beach itself to the left side of the pavilion. And yes, it is possible that people are biking to Tower Beach or walking to Tower Beach that are living in Sea Pines that are using that access. The facilities themselves are for property owners. However, both because we are short-staffed and because it would be an incredible imposition to put a guard at the bottom of the beach area coming onto that walkway, we do not try to regulate who uses our facilities. It may well be that a visitor who was not in Sea Pines and biked down towards Tower Beach will use the bathroom. It may well be that they will use that walkway to get back to the street. That we just have to have patience here, folks. To insist that we ask for identification as a property owner would put far more strain on your grandchildren when they need to go to the bathroom than it will stop the one or two people who may not be property owners using it. Also talking about beach access. I know a number of property owners over the years have enjoyed the so-called quiet of what appears to be a relatively private beach because most of the crowds were at the beach club or Tower Beach. As Sea Pines is more populated and more people are coming from renting in other parts of the community, they are likely walking onto the beach access that is owned by CSA, managed by CSA, and available to anyone who resides in Sea Pines. So it is very possible that your beach no longer will be as quiet as it was in the past. That's nothing CSA can do to stop it. These are access points that are available to anyone who resides in Sea Pines. It's just a matter of there are more people here and they are using different ways to get to the beach, including other beach access. So those are the three things I wanted to mention. Sam, you had something else you had?
I just wanted to thank Toby and his team. They really are the face of Sea Pines as it relates to coming through the gate and then interaction with the community or our property owners, our visitors, our guests. As you heard from Toby's report, they are also the first line of defense, for lack of a better term, when it comes to crime and things of that nature. We have a very positive working relationship with Beaufort County Sheriff's Office. They do a great job with the resources they have. But when it comes to security and Sea Pines, Toby and his team are the first line. And I appreciate the work they do day in and day out at night when we're sleeping and working those gates. I've been in the gates, and the gates it is not a pleasant job and a pleasant experience. And I appreciate the work that they do and continue to do. Just want to put that out there and say that to Toby and his team.
And I want to add to that, Sam. I appreciate we have been doing everything we could to staff all of the places that need attendance. One of which is at the Ocean Gate, as Toby mentioned, which has been broken, and we back ordered the piece and it's just waiting. We have had a young attendant out there on a relatively regular basis. She's not there she can't be there all the day, every hour of the day. And we're doing the best we can when she can't be there to staff it. But what was disappointing to me was to hear from her the number of visitors and property owners who are extremely rude when they're told if they don't know the gate number and they don't have identification, they can't come in. Now, I know we can't always control those outsiders, but for those who are listening or watching or read my letter, I do hope property owners at the very least will appreciate that when she asks for identification or the pass number, it's for our protection. Is to keep as many people who shouldn't be here off our bike path. So, and I think that's probably true for Tower Beach attendant and for the parking lot attendant at Hilton Head Prep when we have one there. Let's try to treat them with respect. They're doing the best they can. Toby's mentioned how many situations we have where we need to put our forces. And so let's remember that they're doing the best they can and they're doing it for your protection. That's enough on that issue, I believe. Any other questions? Let's move on then to our financial report. Ms. Shanahan.
Okay.
Shoot the camera, back on camera. There you are.
You're right, there I am. Okay, I'm going to be very brief. I'm going to run through the balance sheet, and this is as of May 31st of 2021. There's a significant over 12 million in investments. Some of that is our 21 assessments, which will be maturing throughout the year as funds are needed. We have a $354,000 receivable. 200 of that is the short-term rental companies that have ordered passes in advance, and they get billed on a monthly basis. And there's approximately 120,000 of that is from our residential property owners with assessment. So it's a little bit over 100 property owners are not current on their assessment. Fixed assets, liabilities are in line. I did want to point out under the fund balances, there are two new designated fund balance. One is the infrastructure improvements fund balance, and that is simply the projects that we intend to use with the referendum funds, but we have gone ahead and started those projects. So that's why that fund balance is in the negative. And finally, we're keeping up with that $2 increase in the short-term rental weekly pass and the expenditures at Lot 8 associated with that. I'm going to move on to the income statement. As I mentioned, this is for the year ended May 31st, 2021. When you're looking at the budget to actual, I wanted to point out the daily gate passes are over budget by almost $277,000. If you recall, how we budgeted for gate revenues is we took the actual revenues from 19 and budgeted them for 2021. So that's that increase. Short-term rental are over budget by 150,000, and our annual permits are up over budget by 43,000. So that's 461,000 over budget. Moving down into the expenditures, you'll see we haven't spent in maintenance and security. Our full salaries and benefits. Again, going back to the fact that we are not fully staffed. You'll see I'm coming down to major repairs and projects. It says we're haven't spent 1.9. It's simply a timing issue. I fully expect that to even out as the year goes by. And as Sam mentioned, under other income, you've got that $111,000 that we got from the town. And there's a gain on disposal of access of almost 61,000. 45,000 of that is we got trade-ins for our old trolleys. So I wanted to point that out. And obviously you can see we're up over budget by over $3 million. So, and that's attributable to those items that I pointed out. Does anybody have any questions?
Hearing none,
Okay.
we need to accept that financial statement.
Yes, sir.
Is there, Mr. Borghese?
I move that we accept the financial statements for the month of year-to-date May.
Any, is there a second? Mr. Thompson, any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, please. Any opposed? Those are accepted. Thank you. Mr. Borghese, you want to discuss the Elliott Davis report?
Ms. Adams has her hand up.
I'm sorry.
Carolyn has her hand up.
I'm sorry, Carolyn, Ms. Adams? Take your,
Oh, she was
frozen. She was frozen.
She was frozen.
well, you voted on everything, and you've approved everything. It's all right, go ahead.
The only, while the Finance Committee did not have a meeting, three of our members who are essentially a subcommittee for our subcommittee of our auditors did meet with our Elliott Davis partner to discuss the report that is part of your package. That report has been restricted by Elliott Davis to only board members. And I want to make that clear that it's not to be distributed outside in accordance with their wishes. If there are any questions in regard to that report, I can tell you that the three members of our subcommittee are all current or recently retired certified public accountants, very familiar with the requirements of generally accepted accounting standards. And therefore, we had a very good meeting and there were really no issues to report to the board with respect to that report. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anyone has one.
Any questions for Mr. Borghese? Then we will move on. Thank you all. Thank you, David. Thank you. Committee reports. Mr. Ellis, communications.
Mr. Chairman, in view of the excellent report that Amanda gave earlier, what was going on in communications, I have nothing to add.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. That's always appreciated. Governance, Mr. Caskey.
Yeah, governance has been active, and as you see, there's a recommendation coming forward that if we want to take it now, but we are continuing to pursue best practices in governance. And the next major topic that we're tackling is how to conduct self-assessment of board processes. And so that'll be a fall initiative for us. Do you want me to do the electronic voting recommendation now?
Please, Jim. Yes, yes. If you and Amanda can work on explain that if necessary. Yes.
Yeah. Governance committee took on the question: how do we start to move the organization forward in terms of electronic voting and other types of technology? We had a series of probably 2 or 3 meetings where we read all of the issues of privacy, the issues of how it works, how votes are tallied, what kind of firms do this. And all of that came together in a unanimous recommendation to advance to the board that we adopt the process of electronic voting for this upcoming cycle of board elections. And that as we gain experience with such a process, that we believe electronic voting can be applicable for annual meetings, potential referendums, et cetera. But right now we want to get the stake in the ground and start with the board election. And I'd ask to enrich the board's level of information is to have Amanda give us just a little sense of what some of the issues are around communication, around making sure we have emails, and the fact that there's going to be a parallel effort that if you are not able to do things electronically, that you'll still be able to have a paper ballot. So Amanda, could you fill in the blanks and then we can come to a solution?
Happy to do that. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jim, for that introduction. So as Jim mentioned, staff has done research on this platform. We are very, very excited for you guys to consider this recommendation. As Jim mentioned as well, part of the big process that we'll need to really achieve, and that's something that we've done fairly consistently, but we will be reaching out through an education campaign to those members we do not have email addresses for. That is already a fairly low number. So we will be really aggressively communicating to make sure that we have the email addresses for members so we can reach those folks. If for some reason somebody does not have an email address, we will work to coordinate with them to ensure we can get them the vote that they can still take. But we do certainly anticipate not only a higher response rate, but a much, much easier system to be able to return that vote specifically. So we're very excited for you guys to consider this recommendation. Any other questions I can answer for you guys before you?
Thank you. Are there questions from the board on this, on the process and how it would be used?
If
Any
not,
questions?
I'd so move the resolution 11A in our packet.
Okay, the resolution 11A reads approval of the electronic voting CPINE CSA Board of Director elections resolved. Community Service Associates, Inc. Board of Directors on recommendation of the Governance Committee approves electronic voting for CPINE's CSA Board of Director elections to include an education campaign to the electorate. Any questions on this resolution? Is there a second? Mr. Pardue, seconds. Mr. Caskey moves. All in favor, raise your hands. Anyone opposed? Carolyn, you're frozen again, or are you opposed?
I think she's frozen again.
I think she voted.
Hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes. You voted yes, I presume.
Yes, I vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, that passes. Thank you, Jim.
Good, thank you.
We'll move on to land use management. Mr. Minor. Try unmute, Charlie. There we go.
Okay. Land use management, there is a report attached to the board package. In addition to that report, I would note that the new rules on land use management and the safety rules go into effect July 1st. So we're about to implement those rules that were passed earlier in the board sessions. The land use management also reviewed the recommendations or the resolutions made by ASPO relative to leaf blowers. We researched the subject further and have submitted a recommendation for review by the board. There are basically two things that can be regulated. One is the hours of use and the days of use, and the other one is the noise level. I would point out that regulating the noise level has proved problematic, and I know of no community in the United States that has implemented that kind of a rule, with the exception of those who have outlawed gas leaf blowers altogether. But again, there's a recommendation that was submitted to the board, and we should have a special session at some point to discuss that and decide where we want to go with it.
Thank you, Charlie.
That's my report.
So just to be clear, the land use management does have a recommendation, but they believe at this point the board needs to study it further.
Yes.
With staff. Thank you.
That's correct.
Any questions for the Charlie on the land use management? Barry? No. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to maintenance. maintenance, enhancement, and major projects. Mr. Barth.
Yeah, thank you very much. Russell and Sam have done a great job, explaining exactly what's going on. I think yesterday was a very good first start indication of what our season looks like. We're in hurricane season right now, and we certainly are in prep mode, for that. And we had quite a deluge yesterday. And I think cleaning everything out the way it's getting done right now is making a big difference. So I certainly agree with both of the coverage they gave us and the audience.
Thank you, Barry. Any questions for Barry about the committee? Seeing none, we'll move on to safety and security. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Safety Security Committee met on June 9th, and everything of an import that we discussed was brought up by Toby. I would like to reiterate that we're following what direction the town is going on the subject of e-bikes. David Ames is heading up a committee that's studying this. However, I would like to reiterate to our community that e-bikes are not permitted within Sea Pines, nor any other of the personal electric transportation devices. In closing though, Mr. Chairman, I would hope everyone in our community would recognize the phenomenal job that Toby McSwain and his team are doing under very, very trying conditions with a limited staffing to maintain the safety and security of Sea Pines. And when you see these guys out on the roads or streets, give them an attaboy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Bill. I agree with you 100%. I think we all really need to appreciate a staff that's understaffed and overwhelmed with the numbers, and just they're doing everything they can to keep us safe and keep the quality of life here at the highest of levels. Any questions for Mr. Johnson on the Safety and Security Committee? Hearing none, we'll move on to the Sea Pines Forest Preserve Advisory Board. Mr. Minor, you're on again.
Yes, the Sea Pines Forest Preserve Advisory Committee meets the second Friday of each month. And we are working on a variety of tasks that we prepared. So we're sort of in progress. I'd like to again thank the resort for implementing the $2 per guest night. One of the problems that the Forest Preserve has had over the years is a lack of income. This is a significant improvement and opens up the opportunity for great improvements within the Forest Preserve. Our current estimate at 50,000 room nights per year just for the resort is close to $100,000 of annual income. I'd also like to thank the Garden Club for their contribution. The Garden Club has closed up their operation, and they contributed their balance sheet of slightly over $1,800 to the Forest Preserve. So that's my report.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions for Charlie on the Forest Preserve Advisory Committee? I know they are working feverishly to develop a strategic plan that we can all look forward to having maximize the use of the Forest Preserve in conjunction with the resort and its compliance. Mr. Ellis, short-term rental.
Mr. Chairman, as everybody has heard periodically during this meeting, one of the big things that is happening is because of the tremendous increase in the population resulting from particularly short-term rentals, more of them on the market, and more people are in the houses, more cars on the road, more bikes are here, more people around. We are conducting, and those are the members of the short-term committee are conducting an email exchange of thoughts as to suggestions that they have as members, property owners, and members of our community. Many of those are things that some of us who are dealing with these problems in other committees have heard. Some are new. And so we're going through the process of trying to get, the thoughts of the members. It's obvious, at least to me, that this community was infrastructure, the lots for houses, the widths of the street, and all of these things were not created with any thought that there would be the number of people occupying sea pines year round as we've had. And that's quite a strain. It's that strain at the gate. It's strain everywhere. There's a tremendous cost associating with trying to take this under control. And that's got to be dealt with as well. So all of these being dealt with to some extent with the short-term committee, rental committee, but also through other committees dealing with it. And it's a major complaint. I get, as I know, Larry, you do, and Sam, I get repeated emails from people complaining about everything, that the number of bikes in the house next to them, et cetera, and cars on the, on the grass, and the loud noises from the swimming pools that are right next to house, the adjoining houses and things of that nature. But, we're going to try it. We find in so many other communities are having the same kind of problems. This is particularly a phenomenon that started with the pandemic, or increased substantially during the pandemic to a number of communities. And all of them are trying to struggle with what they're going to do and how they're going to handle it and how they're going to cope with it, how they're going to regulate it, how they're going to, I guess, tax it, if you want to say, to cover the cost. We're trying to be in contact with, to see what some of the other communities do so that we don't try to recreate the wheel if we find something that's working. If any of you have any thoughts or ideas, please share them. And, because this doesn't appear that it's going to go away. And we've got to try to get a grasp on it. It's causing a tremendous amount of tension in our community, particularly with, between our permanent residents and their life, the life that they expected that they would have when they came here, and things are changing. We can't necessarily stop things from changing, but we've got to find ways to deal with this to make it, to relieve some of this tension and to handle the number of people, cars, bikes, et cetera. So it is a major problem, and we're working on it, as and several of you are also involved in this. So I just want to state this so the community understands we are not ignoring their complaints. We're struggling to find solutions. And the solutions is not just to give the rental agencies or the renters the rules and regulations. They get those. We can't sit there and say, okay, now read every word and repeat it back to us as they come in. We can't force them to, they're just not going to read them, if they don't want to. So we have to look at how we're going to enforce these fines, and it's going to be against the owner of the house, eventually. But we've got to do something. But just making them try to do the rules, we could put the rules in the houses and require they had the rules put on the door of the houses. Well, how many times have you been in a hotel room and the rules of exit and the rooms, if you stay over a night and what you're going to pay is all there? But I bet you might look at the fire escape, but you don't read all of that fine print. And that's what we're dealing with. And they're only here a week, and they know they can try to get away with whatever they can, just as people do. So it's a tough situation. But I'm saying all of this because I want the community to understand that CSA understands it's a tough situation, and CSA is coping with it in several areas, trying to find some solutions, as are all of these other communities. But that said, I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions for David? Jim Caskey, go ahead.
David, just to clarify, the rental properties, and I think some of the things I hear and see is people perceive that CSA somehow is creating this or doing this, versus this is our neighbors. These are ourselves who are taking our properties and converting them to part-time, semi-part-time, or full-time rentals. And so it's all allowed within the covenants of CSA, of Sea Pines, correct? That you could take your house under certain guidelines, certain restrictions, and rent it. So it's really a neighbor, a property owner to property owner issue that we're dealing with, and CSA is the agent to try to intervene. Sometimes I feel like if people feel like CSA has more authority around this than we do in terms of controlling rental, it's really property owners exercising their rights, correct?
Well, it's the way it's been, and, you know, it's allowed in the covenants. There are things that we're looking at in regards to that.
But maybe got
Yep.
more restrictions, things like that.
Right.
Bill Johnson?
Well, yeah, I would like to remind us all that the new LUM effects are taking place starting next month. And there are going to be some controls and responsibilities for the owners of these rental homes. They are going to be responsible for the behavior of their rental guests, and there will be consequences for infractions going forward.
Any other comments? Carolyn?
I just like to point out that we always, it's just a mindset that we always talk about the renters, the renters, the renters. The other phenomenon we are seeing here in Sea Pines is more owners are here, more owners who are not here full time. So these owners are also getting the bikes delivered. These owners are also using the trolleys, but they're owners, not renters. So I think that we just need to stop thinking about owners and it's the renters that are doing all the bad things. It's a lot of owners too who don't maybe spend as much time here and are here now and are also putting more of a strain on our community. So just a note to kind of maybe broaden our mindset just a bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Yeah, I think, first of all, I've been part of the communications within the short-term rental community. And I want to assure folks that that committee is taking very thoughtful consideration of the issues. I don't want to call them problems. As David notes, whether you're here for a short time as an owner or you're here for a short time as a vacationer, you're typically less informed, perhaps, less likely to be sensitive to some of the rules. It's just natural when, and you go away for 2 weeks on our own, we all tend to be thinking more about the fun we're having than necessarily the rules. Not to say that they're ignorant of them, but it is true that having people try and learn all the rules is going to be difficult. The new LUM rules, as Bill points out, will have an impact because we are hopeful that to the extent there are violations by a renter on a regular basis, that renter doesn't in fact want to comply, it will fall on the homeowner, the property owner, to be necessarily taking control and either asking the renter to take care of the problem, or if not, ultimately potentially being subject to fees for failure to comply. That some of them will just put them back on the renter, some may not. But the point is, there is a compliance mechanism. In addition, I think it's fair to say that as we have more short-term renters and we need more security relating to they and others, we may need to impose greater fees on those to pay for the extra security that's necessary. That's also being looked at. So we are taking a very broad brush approach. Ultimately, we don't want to discourage people from being here and enjoying themselves. We do want to encourage them to do so within the rules, and if necessary, that we aren't getting compliance and need more security, we need to pay for it in ways that are necessarily going to have to fall on appropriate groups. So again, I want to assure the community that we are looking at it, that we may not be able to stop under the covenants people from renting, but we certainly can require them to maintain the proper Sea Pines quality of life. And we will do what we can within the resources we have and the legal rights we have to do the best we can to maintain that level of community. It is an issue that we are not ignoring, that we're simply trying to find the right balance between making this a great place to be, but also making it a fun place to visit. With that, I'll turn to strategic planning. Mr. Pardue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Amanda's already touched on this, but I'll just take a few seconds to expand on what we're doing. The strategic plan that was adopted by the board in 2018 was an excellent plan, but it needs, we're in the process of updating it, mainly because about 80 to 90% of that plan has already been adopted. Most of the 2018 plan were really recommendations to the board, recommendations to the staff on various procedures. And I would say that almost all of those have been put in place now. So basically we're trying to update that to go to more and focus on more action things that we're focused on as a community. Traffic is an example. finding ways to raise the proper money we need for things other than infrastructure, that sort of thing. So that's really all that I've got to report. The staff is taking the lead in doing some of the suggested updates, which they promised us to that by our September meeting to have a basic outline of some of the things that the staff would prefer to have updated in a report. So I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Pardue? Hearing none.
Thank you very much.
That concludes our committee reports. Before we move to new business, the one piece of new business, again, I want to remind members of the community who are listening or watching on video, if you have questions, now is the time to pose them. We'll take them through the adjournment and through the initial set of questions, but if you do have questions, and Amanda can read those that we haven't seen yet. So we'll move then to new business. The only piece of new business we have is to ratify the approval of the encroachment agreement for Lighthouse 2 Villas Horizontal Property Regime, XLIV Inc. Lighthouse Lane. You've all seen this and have had the opportunity to review it. Are there any other questions or concerns about the encroachment agreement? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to approve. Anyone? Mr. Birdwell, a second by Mr. Sigmund. If there's no discussion, all in favor of ratifying this encroachment agreement? It's approved. Is there any board members have any other business they'd like to bring to the committee, to the board as a whole? Seeing none, I'll accept the motion to adjourn. Mr. Caskey, seconded by Mr. Richardson. All in favor of adjourning? We are adjourned. We do have a number of questions. I'm going to move right into the Q&A since we want it's relatively early and I think we can all make it. So we have a number of questions that have come in prior to the meeting, and we may have some more that are coming during the meeting. The first is a comment from Mr. Richard Burrows. He is seeing more and more Sea Pines owners are putting their trash receptacles at the end of their driveways near the street on various trash pickup days. I want to remind folks who are listening, and we will certainly note this in our next community letter, trash receptacles are to be maintained in the side of your house. In the service area, they are not to be left out in front of the street. I know on Governor's Road, there's a new trash company that apparently is putting them out, having one man go down and put them out along the street while the truck comes along Governor's. So there may be a very temporary use, although even that will be frowned upon, and we may want to call that company to let them know.
Yes, sir.
But and it may well be that we have some visitors who are used to in their home folks being told on Thursdays you put your trash receptacle out. But it is the rules require the trash receptacle stay within the service yard. And if you're listening and are watching, please continue to comply with that. Thank you, Mr. Burrows, for your comment. I have a question from Laird John Hall. How does the resort, quote, reserve the first 100 feet or so of the beach by the Sea Pines Club? If they are able to do so, can all oceanfront property owners do so? The answer to that question is that in when CSA was created and the Sea Pines Resort, at that point, the company, Sea Pines Plantation Company, quitclaimed some property, most of what CSA common areas. It did not, it retained the part of the beach area that would otherwise have gone to the beach trust, was in fact retained by the Sea Pines Company and now the Sea Pines Resort. And so that is their property. They aren't reserving it. It is the property that they own and they are using it as they see fit. The balance of the property that abuts property, beach oceanfront properties land is owned by the beach trust, and it is not available for use by the adjoining landowner. And in fact, when there are encroachments, we will enforce the lines as best we can to avoid people going into the beach trust property. Sam, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hall, for that question. The next question is from Mr. Sante, who would like to purchase a pedal-assisted bike because he can no longer use a regular bike, and what do we have against them? The answer to the on the e-bikes is, as Mr. Johnson noted, we are studying this issue. We are working on continuing to investigate ways that we may in the future be able to accommodate some electronic assisted bikes. Right now, we don't have an answer, and given the nature of our leisure trails and the amount of traffic that are on them, we are not yet prepared to allow e-bikes of any form. But I can assure Mr. Sante and others who have asked us about this on a regular basis that we're sympathetic to those who need pedal assisted to be able to bike. And we are hoping we can come up with a solution sometime in the near future. Sam, do you want to add anything else to that?
No, sir. Let's go right.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sante. Next question is from Mr. Bob Quinn. I have recently been informed that using the site for the relocated CSA offices and converting the existing CSA building to a community center is off the table. Is this true? And in any event, how could we ever pay for it, as it was not included in the infrastructure referendum? The answer to the question is the strategic planning group committee is looking at a number of alternatives for a CSA community center and a CSA offices. Nothing is off the table, but there are also currently no plans to move the CSA office and converting the existing building into community center. But Mr. Quinn, nothing is off the table. Mr. Quinn also asks about if we cannot use or afford to do anything with the building, what about a fully automated ATM lane for issuing all gate passes, which would pay for itself and cost savings? Again, I believe the MEMP committee will be looking at a variety of alternative uses of the gallery shops if and when we had raised that area. Mr. Quinn, I will certainly suggest to the MEMP that they look at that as one of the things we may want to look at.
It would be a combination of MEMP, gate entry, and safety and security as we look at the gallery shops in the Greenway corridor in totality as we move ahead in the future.
So we will certainly put that on the list of things we're considering. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. The next question comes from Michelle Aquino. Given the significance of the increased traffic and efforts to be made as indicated in the chairman's just released report to control it, and the cost burden associated with it, what will be the fair way to distribute that cost burden without penalizing year-round and other property owners who do not rent? Our revenue task force is looking at a variety of potential resources for new revenue to cover the substantial increase in operating expenses, not only in terms of additional staffing, but additional staffing costs that we believe we need to accommodate what I keep referring to as CPINES 2021 and beyond. I want to stress, as Ms. Adams just did, that this is not only a rental issue. We, of the 300 and some odd sales that were made during the last year, a number of those were made to folks who intend to stay and use this as their residence. So we're not only talking about increased traffic from short-term renters, although there are more short-term rental properties. We're also talking about increased traffic and other issues from property owners. We are hoping we can find ways to equitably distribute the need for revenue among those who are causing the costs. And we're doing the best we can with that revenue task force. And I am extremely hopeful that by the end of the year, we will have found those solutions during this year for the board. But we are certainly sensitive to trying to fairly accommodate the costs among those that are cost causers. Thank you, Ms. Aquino, for that question. The next question is from Ms. Terry Weiss. We are continuing the Zoom meetings, board meetings, without allowing homeowners to attend in person. And that is because we have found that these Zoom meetings are available to property owners who happen to be here and have the time, as well as those who are not here and who can watch these on video. We do not have those resources at the community center to do a Zoom meeting at the community center. Will you at least add back the live Zoom Q&A that occurred 2 or so meetings ago, where the questioner can actually speak to live and follow up? Ms. Weiss, I'll tell you the truth, we didn't realize that there was a particular difference between being able to submit your questions as you have and having me reading them and having you read them yourself live. But we will certainly look at that to see if there's a significant difference and benefit in having, as long as the questions are asked, we will look at whether or not having them asked by the person who's asking them would make a difference in the ability to answer them appropriately. Her second question is, why not add speed monitors along Greenwood Plantation Lighthouse and Sea Pine Drive? We understand that there is certainly a problem of people driving fast on all of these places. It is very difficult to drive at the speed limit without feeling like people are behind you. We do have a limited security staff, and when possible, we do put out what I'll call speed traps along those lines. The speed monitors are expensive, and speed cameras that actually issue tickets are even more expensive, and recognize those tickets would ultimately go to the Beaufort County, I believe, Sam, wouldn't they?
Actually, Larry, just for clarification, in the state of South Carolina, you cannot issue a ticket through a camera or a monitor. It must be done by an officer.
Okay.
So that is not an option for us or any other entity in the state, municipal or otherwise.
Thank you. I'm glad you asked. You asked. In terms of additional speed monitors, they are expensive. We can certainly look into whether or not we can put in some, if to the extent. I will tell you, living on Governor's Road near a speed camera, it always amazes me that they see the 40-mile-an-hour number come up and they seem to continue going because it stays at 40 miles an hour. But if we think it will help, we'll certainly do that. So thank you for that suggestion. Ms. Weiss next asked, I've asked repeatedly for security to buy and keep a spare wheelchair in case of emergency. I think the concern is that if there is a true emergency that involves someone who needs a wheelchair, 911 and our EMS troop is a far better resource than one of our security staff who may not be adequately trained in dealing with those, but we will look into this, right, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Next question is, how much rent does ARB pay for its space in our CSA building? The ARB is a committee of the ARC, which is a private corporation, and we do not discuss contracts between CSA and private corporations. So I'm not in a position to answer that question. Next question from Ms. Weiss. How much do we pay Greg Russell annually to entertain at Liberty Oak? Did we pay him last year when performances were canceled? And do we pay rent to the resort for Greg's use of the Liberty Oak venue? Again, Mr. Russell and the resort are private corporations, and we do not discuss private contracts with CSA, so I am not in a position to answer that question. But thank you for those questions, Ms. Weiss. Last is from Mr. Rader, John W. Rader Sr., who had sent it to all of the board. And the question here is relates to posting someone at the gate, the Ocean Gate bike trail, and his concern living along that street that in the absence of a guard on a full-time basis, a number of unauthorized bikers are coming through. Mr. Prater, we don't disagree with you that it's a problem. As we noted it during the board meeting, we have ordered the park to fix that gate, and we're doing everything we can to get that park. We do have, when we have the resources available, we are putting an attendant at that gate to make sure that only those who either know the code or who or can show resident ID or short-term pass renter ID can get in. Unfortunately, we don't always have that resource, and so there are going to be times when we have to rely on the gate attendant himself, the gate attendant, to see who's coming through. And we do have signs that ask you only to come in. We're doing the best we can there within the limited resources, and our hope is over time we can fill the staff necessary to do it more regularly.
I will add, Larry, that we are, I think we're about to hire a couple more high school students that have become available from since school is out and any vacation time they wanted to get in before they went to work is over. So I'm hopeful that we'll have a couple of additional attendants that use that gate in other places.
Good, that's great, Sam. But recognize we won't have someone all the time. There are going to be times when it's either after hours or we just don't have the staff. And sadly, people will come in who shouldn't. We can put signage up all we want, and we can only hope that they honor their legal obligations. The last question I have is from Ms. Susan Bedard. She's asking how her sons who are staying in their home can, when they are not with their sons, can park at the beach club or Tower Beach. Unfortunately, only property owners are entitled to park at the beach club consistent with the resort's policies and Tower Beach consistent with our policies. So if your sons are not on your deed, they are not authorized to park at either of those locations. They can park with a pass, a guest pass, during the peak time at the Hilton Head Prep, where property owners and their family and guests can park, or they can take the beach shuttle. But those are their alternatives. Ms. Bedard. Amanda, did we get any additional questions?
Yes, sir. We just have one additional item to note. It is a comment from Mr. Lee Stevens. Mr. Stevens would like to thank all the CSA staff for their hard work, especially now that Sea Pines is fully occupied. The community looks great and continues to operate with great efficiency. It's his comment.
That was it?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you. Thank you to those who submitted questions. As always, you can always submit during the time we're not in session to info, I think it's info@csa.com, Amanda?
info@csacpines.com is our general info inbox, and staff.
Or you can write directly to me at chairman@csacpines.com, and I promise you will receive a response. Thank you, board members, for sitting with us, and we will meet again formally in September. And we will meet probably informally or if necessary in emergency meetings during the summer. If we don't otherwise meet, enjoy your summer and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.